Good morning, everyone, for our now 12th Atos RBU Central Europe Breakfast TV. Today it's all about space, and we all remember that beeping noise of Sputnik we also saw in the video. To be honest, today that was my ringing alarm. But yes, that was just a little contribution I could do for starting this day off Atos in space. Martina, quite a thrilling topic. Good morning in Munich. Good morning, Germany.
Good morning, Freezer. Yes, this is really an amazing topic. I mean, I saw just the numbers, how many satellites are in the orbit. I mean, that's really something. I mean, and I'm quite happy that we are somehow part of it, huh?
Well, yeah, that's absolutely right. The numbers of the satellites, that's amazing. And it's getting fuller and fuller. We read messages about people thinking that stars are floating, new unidentified flying objects are coming by. And we know somebody who's also producing cars put them up for having better internet on Earth, but that's just the one side. Today, we want to learn more about Atos in space, what we are doing, what you mentioned, Martina, and what the challenges are. And it's so great that we have experts with us again. So I'm so pleased that I may introduce Hans Steiner, CTO Space and Avionics at Atos. Hans, you know way more about that whole space topic, what happens there and all that. But tell us a little bit more and maybe introduce yourself. What is a CTO in Space and Avionics doing at Atos?
Yeah, well, good morning, Freezer. Good morning, Martina. Good morning, everybody out there. CTO, as a CTO doing, I am heading all the innovations, respectively solutions and products development at Atos Space and Avionics. This is what I'm doing. Now, what's out there? You have seen 65 years of history, relatively short history, but compared to internet, a bit longer history. And space in the meantime is really ubiquitous. You have it everywhere. You have, for instance, in your mobile phone or in the smartphone, navigation signal receivers. You have satellite communication on global events, for instance. Now the funeral of the Queen will be transmitted worldwide via satellite, or the Olympics, respectively. Weather report in the evening after the news. The screen that you see in the background is always a satellite image, and the latest satellite image to give you the weather forecast. So space is in the meantime ubiquitous, 65 years of history. Now, what is space? What is the space environment? Space environment is, we call it on the one hand, the space segment. This is really the fancy stuff that you see, the rockets that are launched, the satellites that are launched. You saw it in the video, more than 5,000 active satellites orbiting the Earth at the moment. We have the orbits above 100 kilometers is called space. So everything 200 kilometers is atmosphere, and above 100 kilometers is space. It goes then up to low Earth orbit, to medium Earth orbit, to geostationary orbit, and further on to deep space. So in deep space, these are the planetary missions, for instance. And then on the other hand, you have the ground segment. And actually the ground segment, although not so spectacular as the space segment, the ground segment is where the business is. It's the highest, the largest part of the space economy is on the ground. Just to give you some figures, satellite production per year is roughly 14 billion US dollars, whereas the ground is roughly 370 million. So it's a big difference. So all the total market, I mentioned it already, it's roughly 400 billion US dollars, and it's estimated that it's going to grow by 2040 until 1 trillion US dollars. So a really heavily growing market, big opportunities, and also for Atos. You asked also a little bit about the challenges. I talk a little bit about technical challenges. First of all, it's quite a harsh environment. So no atmosphere. It is very cold out there, and on the one hand, and very hot on the other side. So a satellite that is in orbit and exposes its side to the sun can reach up to 250 degrees Celsius on the sunny side. On the shady side, on the shadow side, it can be 150 degrees minus. So you have within 1 or 2 meters of a satellite, you have a temperature gradient of 400, 500 degrees. And finally, or not finally, but just as a second example, space debris, for instance. Space debris is really a nuisance in the meantime. We estimate that there are out there 1 million objects in near Earth orbit, 1 million, that actually circles the Earth. Out of these, of course, these 5,000 active satellites, the rest of the stuff pretty dead, so uncontrolled. And this is really a threat to our space infrastructure. And just to give you another figure, an object that is in 800 kilometers from Earth's surface, it takes the object 150 years to come back to re-enter the atmosphere. So pretty challenging. And the challenge is how to get rid of these objects, respectively, how to avoid collisions.
Yeah, well, I think so. So we heard about that even like some of the satellites get, how to say, like abducted and brought to other orbits and all that stuff. So I'm having the very detailed model of something like that, collecting space debris also here. Those numbers are amazing. So there will be any waste collection in the future coming up there? And how is it, like you said, like a number of satellites not working? And where is that all going to? Will we be no stars in the future anymore because of all the satellites and the debris?
Yeah, yes, in fact, it's as I mentioned already, it's a threat. Well, why is a satellite not working? Can have several reasons. First of all, maybe it was not tested good enough, so it just stops the communication or it stops the power supply, or it runs out of fuel. That's the natural end of a satellite. Mm-hmm. And the issue is there is a convention out there, and there are discussions out there at the moment that these objects or the satellites, they should come back within 25 years after the end of their mission. But almost none of the satellites is currently doing this, unless, of course, they are in low Earth orbit, like you mentioned, the car maker from the US. His satellites are roughly in 500 to 1,000 kilometers. So 500 kilometer satellites, they come back within 25 years naturally. So there is no need. But you mentioned also, yes, there are initiatives out there to collect space debris, really like a net, to throw something like throwing a net, or grabbing it with a robotic arm and then bring it to re-entry, or put a rocket motor on a larger object. Like you imagine that there are also upper stages of rockets, mm-hmm. and these are huge, really huge. And then you put just a motor on it. But I just say it's very difficult actually to do it. And then
sounds easier, right?
Then start the motor and then have a controlled re-entry. The other stuff is that you wait. So as I said, low Earth orbit and 500, 600 kilometers, it takes 25 years. So it's a natural decay. And out in geostationary orbit, there is no need. Normally what you do there, you put the satellites in a so-called graveyard orbit. You just use the last fuel of the satellite and you elevate their orbit by 200, 300, 400 kilometers. And then they are parked there. They will never come back, actually.
Well, at least that's the plan. And it sounds a bit like, okay, we should think about that in the near future. So just like, oh, if it's more far away, we don't need to care for it. I think we will, in a couple of maybe 50 or 100 years, need to talk about that. Martina, that's quite interesting. So there are so many satellites, which also sometimes make it work that we can do our RBU Breakfast TV, but also other things where Atos is involved. Martina, what do you say about that, what Hans said?
Well, I mean, I think it's really, really interesting for us because it's, the first time that I've heard that in which kind of business we are. And I mean, this is really something very special. And I'm sure not many companies can do that and could say, okay, we are working for the orbit or with satellites and support the world at the end. So not to have too much trash in the orbit next to us, right? But you have something on your desk. Maybe we should put your picture a little bit bigger, Friso, that we could see it better. Yeah, that's really nice. Did you put it together?
I'm also into space, and I was working a lot, and maybe just like, okay, this is just a playing model. But at the same time, I found it because space debris, okay, that's an asteroid with a Gemini, can be collected in an arm to better understand it. Because when I went for today's business breakfast, my little son asked me, so what is your company doing in space? And I was like, how could I explain that? And yeah, sometimes I like my job so I can order some Lego models and play together with him and explain what we are doing. But that's just a little part of what Atos is doing in space. And I think, Martina, you can shed some light on that with the upcoming guest. Maybe in the meantime, for the participants that are joining us live.
Sorry, I do have a guest here. I do not have a space shuttle with me here in my studio. And unfortunately, I haven't got a nice jacket like you have. But I have a virtual guest. And this is Eyas Daka. And I hope he will appear on our screen. But he needs to have some patience, Eyas, because we have a short video before we come to you. Let's run the video.
Over the last few decades, satellites have become ubiquitous in our daily life. Space companies are racing to launch satellites, and satellites must communicate. Atos, a global leader in digital transformation, offers a whole range of solutions and products in the space domain. As an experienced and trusted partner, Atos offers a full range of electrical satellite testing solutions to make sure your satellites achieve their designed lifetime. Our services cover the entire range, from low-cost missions up to mega constellations. Our modern solution is ready to deploy for your control ground segment, leveraging new architectures and technologies for high performance, security, and scalability. As the sky becomes crowded, the amount of interference increases constantly, with negative impacts on data transmission. Atos ensures high-quality satellite communication. Imagine a world where agriculture is more efficient. Imagine a world where cities are safer. No matter the sector, satellite data can deliver the edge you need. Atos is the vital link to maximize the benefits between the digital world and the space domain.
Yes, welcome to our breakfast television. Yes, you are Director Global Sales, Aerospace and Defense, correct?
Right. Good morning to you, Martina.
Good morning. So you are an expert in satellites, and we've just seen it. It's a lot about communication, and that was quite important in the last 2.5 years. But we are also in other areas. So maybe you could a little bit, explain what Atos is doing, for example, when it comes to the manufacturing of satellites.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for inviting me to the show, and it's a great pleasure to be with you today. So, Martina, I would like, first of all, to start, Hans extended a bit on what we are doing in space. I would like to go back to Earth and to talk how we are contributing to the space domain on the ground. So, the recent pandemic and the recent conflict in Europe taught us or reminded us as humans how dependent we are on each other, and how sustainable means of communications helped us to cope with the difficult times that we had in the past 2-3 years, right? And I think, it makes me proud to see how we are contributing to all of that, how we help consumers all around the world to connect and to make sure that they are able to communicate with each other and with the external world. So, in Atos, what we are doing in the space domain is covering the entire lifespan of the satellite. As Hans mentioned, from the manufacturing part, where we are providing the critical testing of the satellites before they are going into orbit. So we are ensuring that the power, the payload, and the RF are working correctly on the ground before the satellites are sent to orbit. And then once the satellites are operational in orbit, we provide a satellite monitoring solution where we ensure the quality of service for the end customers and the quality of the signals. in that domain, in the satellite monitoring domain, what we are doing is basically covering three different areas of our life. First of all, we provide the commercial satellite operators with all the necessary monitoring solution in order to test and to monitor the quality of signals coming from the satellite and going to the satellite from the ground, in order to ensure that there is high quality of service for the end customers at the end of the day. In the second sector, we are doing a lot of monitoring for the national regulators, where customers like the German regulator, the South Korean regulator, and others around the world are able to make sure that the frequency allocation is being monitored appropriately, and everybody is using their allocated frequencies. So it's very critical for the national regulators. And last but not least, we are working with ministries of defense to protect their satellite communication assets, especially during a conflict or during any kind of natural disaster, where all the communication are routed to the satellites. And in such situations, we need to be 100% sure that those satellite assets and satellite communication assets are 100% reliable for the communications on Earth. And then, what is really interesting in the domain of space. Space is vast, right? And a lot of companies around the world are contributing pieces of technologies. So I think it's a mandatory that we have partnerships with other companies. And I'm pleased that our colleagues in Japan will join us on stage in a minute from Mitsui Busan Aerospace. We have partners all around the world, in the US, in Europe, in Asia, and it is basically exciting to be part of a team that is contributing to improving life on our planet and playing a key role of making life much more comfortable for the next generations. And as a closing point from my side, and maybe a hint for Martina and Friso, we are also replicating knowledge that we acquired in space in other domains. And maybe for the next show, you can get a chance to talk about our innovation in automotive and e-mobility, how we learned from space to replicate the technology and the know-how to contribute in that domain.
Yes, I mean, this is really, this sounds really interesting, and I'm quite proud to be part of it. Friso, you have two other guests, right?
Yeah, we have some other guests, but we just had like the topic for show 13, or let's say like 15, because right now I think the money Hans will ask for being part of our show just raised a lot. So we need some couple of weeks to go until he might forget that. But that sounds great. We're coming back on this. So learning from space, putting it into automotive. But on the other hand, well, it was a little bit like theory. What are the concrete use cases? And this Years was already spoiling it a little bit. We're so happy. We have some guests joining us from quite far away, not directly from space, but let's say from Vienna, Austria. It's quite a lot of space what you have to travel to see you here. So I'm so happy and very honest to introduce Mori Moto, Deputy General Manager, Aviation Business Department, and Mio Shinsuke, Senior Manager, Defense and Space Systems from Mitsui Business Aerospace Company. And I had to read that off. Good morning. Thank you for joining us, gentlemen. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here today.
Yeah, hello. Good morning.
It's absolutely great.
This is Mori of Mitsui. First of all, I would like to extend my appreciation for your invitation to this program. It is a great honor for us to be given the opportunity to work with Atos. So you are not familiar with the company named Mitsui. So Mitsui is one of the largest trading company in Japan, and a group of the highly diverse professionals. So we are working in the various area, utilizing our capability of the business management, project development, financing, investment. Our total sales last year was 90 billion euro, and the gross profit was 7 billion euro. We, Mitsui Bussan Aerospace, is one of the strategic company under Mitsui in the area of the aerospace, and the professional and the designated staff are gathering here. So as you see through the SpaceX project generated by Elon Musk, the tendency is how private industry are more aggressively involved in the space-related programs in collaboration with the governmental sectors. Given the situation, we are now focusing on the privatization of the space programs, which have been originally initiated by the governmental sector, like privatization of the International Space Station, together with our partner. So without that, so we have been exploring the various space business together with our partner all over the world. So as for the defense area in Japan, so space is a new domain as well as the cyber and electromagnetic technology, how to protect our country from threats from the space. So we are introducing innovative technology in the United States and Europe to the Japanese Ministry of Defense, and also coordinating the collaboration on the industrial level. So recently, so we have successfully realized the contract with a certain Japanese electric company for SkyMon, which is a brand name of the Atos system for the satellite monitoring system. So taking this opportunity, I would like to say that without tireless effort and support by Mr. Elias Daka, so we could not have realized this business. Thank you very much. Yeah, I could say Atos is not a company which manufacture satellite and rocket, but make space more familiar and realistic to us by utilizing your cutting edge digital transformation technology. In my opinion, such Atos position is so unique and competent. We would like to explore further business opportunity together with Atos.
Well, thank you so much. And it's an honor for our side. And I think a really good example of a great collaboration. You're right, we're not manufacturing rockets. I wish we would, like going to a plant where I could just join and say, oh, I work here. No, but it's a very interesting insight. Could you give us a short view from your side for the future? What will be the future challenges? You mentioned even defense in space. We all thought about that just like for aliens, but there might be other threats. How can we solve them, and especially how can we solve them maybe together?
Yeah, thanks to the rapid development of the technology and the innovative and the challenging approach by the governmental organization and the private industry, I could say that space has been becoming more near and familiar to us. On the other hand, it would be difficult for us alone to predict what kind of the new technologies will be required. for further exploration of the space, because we are not the scientist and the manufacturer. The competence of a company is explained business management and project development together with a partner. And we also play a role in the investment, financing, and risk sharing for the new programs. So given the situation, we see a big potential for Atos as the indispensable player in the space market. So, Mallory, adventurer for the Mount Everest, the most highest mountain, he was asked, why did you want to climb the Mount Everest? Then he replied, because it's there. Space is the same. Why will we explore the space? Because it is there. Let's do it together.
Well, thank you so much. I really think, yeah, let's do it together and find out what is there. We're getting new images of different Earths. I just read in the news today, there might be an Earth-like a planet anywhere. It's too far away. I wanted to buy a ticket, but maybe we're going to do this together. Thank you so much. It was an absolute honor. Martina, I think this is so great. Thinking of like a thing like space. When I looked at it up at the sky, and when I was a kid, I was like, oh wow, stars. And there are some other things, but it's like we are part of that. And Hans and Iyas, you joining in. That's amazing. Maybe just like a quick round, but Martina, what do you think? And do you have any questions to our guests? We asked for the participants, but they're just so stunned in front of their desktop or mobile phone.
They don't have any questions.
Maybe lost in space, huh?
Yeah, well, it's really amazing what we are doing there, and of course with partners, what we are doing there. Actually, no question comes to my mind at the moment, because I'm so amazed and stunned about what we do that nothing comes to my mind, and I'm not sure how much time do we have. Oh well, we have 2 minutes still left, but maybe some of our guests, maybe Hans, has something to add. What we've just heard, and what we could do in the, what are the next steps? Yeah, what is the next, what will come in the future?
Yeah, right. Maybe can give you some. Mori-san has already mentioned it. The space domain is currently changing. So what we say from old space to new space environment, and new space brings a lot of new things to us. That is why I call it new space. For instance, private money flows in. This is what Mori-san has already mentioned. So a lot of private players are currently competing in the arena. Because whereas a couple of years ago, there were only government players, like NASA, government player, ESA, government player, so all the space agencies, or the Department of Defenses. And this brings along new methods, for instance, of manufacturing. We are talking about mass manufacturing in the meantime of satellites. Like look at a commercial satellite or a commercial SATCOM satellite in the past has been manufactured over between 2 and 3 years. In the meantime, we talk about a daily production, so one satellite per day. And this has been put in place by Elon Musk, but as well as here in Europe by Airbus. They are really manufacturing on a cadence of one satellite per day. Or at the same time, if you have so many satellites, only in the past years, you mentioned it in the video, about 3,000 satellites have been launched, mainly by the mega constellations. But this means also the launch costs, they come down, because in former times, the shuttle, 1 kilo, to bring 1 kilo payload from Earth to orbit with the shuttle, space shuttle, it cost roughly $30,000 per kilo. And in the meantime, we are down to $3,000 per kilo. So 90% or 10% of the costs that we had initially. And finally, not to mention, and everybody I think has heard it, space tourism has not been mentioned. So space tourism becomes a reality, or became already a reality last year. We have 3 players in the meantime. So one is Jeff Bezos with Blue Origin. He actually was above the 100 kilometers, so he really is an astronaut. And then Richard Branson, he did not reach the 100 kilometers, so he's not considered an astronaut. And then there's Axiom. They organize, for instance, trips to the space station, ISS. But this is pretty costly. You have to be very rich in order to go there. It's about 40 to 50 million that you have to pay for it, for a flight to the space station.
Well, thank you so much, Hans. I was counting and calculating in like $30,000 or $30,000 per kilogram. So I'm ready for my fitness program to go on. So that's an interesting pricing topic, especially for space tourism. So your flight tickets pay per kilo, and that might bring people to another way of health. That was so great. Hans, thank you so much. Maybe, Mori-san, would you like to add something at the very end? Thank you for being with us in the show. Anything you would give our participants before we close today's call? And then we just like switch over to ES for a second. And Martina, then we can say goodbye for this morning. Mori-san, absolute pleasure. Your topic you want to share. It's like, what's next? Where should I invest?
Yes, as I mentioned, so it is necessary for us to work together with our partner. And I am looking forward to the expanding the business opportunity with Atos. Thank you very much for the time.
That's perfect. Thank you so much taking the time being with us today. Ias, maybe some closing words from your side, and then Martina, I think it's time to go. We leave the show.
Yeah. Thanks, Friso. Thanks for inviting us to the show. It was great. I think that we have a lot to do, and we are just started the journey. Hans said that 70 years is a very short history. So we started the journey 20-something years ago. We are at the beginning, and we are counting on Hans and his team to come with more innovations.
Thanks, Ias. Martina, handing over, and I think the next Breakfast TV is already coming up, or?
Yes, but it's not from space, huh? Because, but maybe in some years from now we will have breakfast television from space. No, the next breakfast television is in October. I think it's October 5th, correct?
Right.
I have no calendar with me, but I think so. And this will be about women in tech.
Sounds great. So, Martina, was a great Breakfast TV again. Yeah. Thank you for having us all here. Women in Tech. I'm looking forward. I already got the question what I will be wearing during that Breakfast TV. Let's work on that. Martina, have a great day. Thanks to all our guests.
Exactly. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.